Hello and welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. We're back with you this week. Hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. And today we're going to be getting into the start sits for the quarterbacks. So we're going to be going over a QB1 start, a QB1 sit, a QB2 start, a QB2 sit, and then a sleeper for this week. Week 14, a lot of buys this week, going into a must win for a lot of you guys. So hopefully some of these decisions will help you out. Also, we're trying to hit 325 subscribers. So if you could hit that subscribe button if you're here, we'd appreciate that a lot. So going into the first guy, jumping straight in, we're going to talk about Jared Goff. So he's our QB1 start this week. He's going up against Green Bay. So I do think that, pretty good defense, obviously rivalry matchup. They both played on Thursday, so they're on week rest. It's not a short week for them, despite it being a Thursday game. And Goff has been really good, honestly, over the last 3 weeks. He didn't throw any touchdowns in week 12 against Indianapolis. That really left a lot to be desired because the running backs had four rushing touchdowns in that game. But he has 4 touchdowns against Jacksonville the week before. He had 2 touchdowns this past week with 220 yards. So it was 34, 10, and 17 points. And so overall, I think he's just been playing really well. A lot of completions still. Not quite as crazy as that early season or earlier in the season when he was just 100% through the first, half in 3 straight games or whatever it was. But I do think in a game where it should be competitive division game, they have their foot on the gas. Green Bay's defense is a little bit better on the ground than they've been seeing. So I do think that they might have to lean on Goff a little bit more than they have over these last couple weeks.
Yeah, and this is projected to be the highest over-under of the week, so I'm very excited for this game on Thursday night. And like you mentioned, Jared Goff, he hasn't thrown a pick since week 3 outside of that fluky 5-interception game. I'm curious, who would you start between he and Jordan Love in this game?
I'd start Goff.
Start Goff.
I think,
okay.
Yeah, I'd start Goff. I think Love has been okay, but I still am a little worried that he's kind of banged up. I don't know if Dobbs is going to go in this game. I hope he can get right from the concussion protocol, but he's still questionable. And really, the offense for Green Bay has been running a lot more through Jacobs, and so I just think there was a lot of touchdowns early for Love, but that part of that kind of offense hasn't really been going. Reed still feels like he's banged up, even though he scored twice last week. I mean, only 25 receiving yards. So I do think I'd play Goff over Love this week.
And side note, has anyone checked on Jahmyr Gibbs? Did Dan Campbell eat him alive or anything?
Yeah, or exile him. Is he going to be in the doghouse? I mean, that's unbelievable, dude. He lost a fumble going on the 6-yard line, and then barely played the rest of the game, and then leaked the play calls. Dude, he took a picture and posted it to his Instagram, and they had all their play calls on the whiteboard. I was like, dude, what is that, dude? You can literally see all of them.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. I was just flabbergasted.
Yeah, and the reporter that broke it to him, that was so funny. The reporter asking him about it as though he already knew, and then Campbell's like, "What happened? What is that? I'm gonna have to address that." Yeah, immediately ends the press conference and leaves. Yeah. He immediately went to go find Gibbs or figure out what's going on. That's so funny.
I would not want to be on his bad side.
No, but obviously Montgomery's been having a massive workload anyways. I mean, the passing game even has been kind of split. So obviously Gibbs has been a stud. I don't expect him to have any limitations in this game, but that is a funny development too that happened this week. Moving over to our QB1 sit for the week. This has kind of been a big talking point for us all year long, but we're going to go back to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, so he's facing off against the Chargers this week. Chargers are only allowing 15 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. However, over the last 4 weeks, they've kind of had some tougher opponents. They're up to 18 points per game, but we know they faced Lamar, Joe Burrow, so that kind of padded those stats. They're still only allowing 206 yards per game through the air. And the last time Mahomes played the Chargers, he put up 245 yards, but only 1 touchdown to 1 interception. So I think it was a 13-point fantasy performance. I will say, with Mahomes, he's kind of been that, I don't want to say floor play because I think he's QB 10 on the season, but he hasn't had any really dud games. I think his lowest is 12. So he is a safe play in Superflex. But if you're, going for a playoff push in a 1 QP league, like you can get higher upside than Mahomes this week.
Yeah, and I think, we look at Mahomes and here, he's been playing better. He's been throwing more touchdowns. And it's like, well, I mean, he had a big day against Tampa Bay where he threw 3 touchdowns and had 25 points. And then he had a big day against Carolina where he had 28 points and threw 3 touchdowns. It's like, okay, the Buffalo game where he also threw 3 touchdowns, he only had 16 points. So he really, I don't know, it feels like 2 matchups that they really took advantage of through the air.
Yeah.
And, it's just like the rest of the games, it's been the Raiders he didn't do that well against. Denver, he didn't do that well against. The Raiders, again, he didn't do that well against. San Francisco, he didn't do that well against. So it's like, I understand that if you're in a Superflex league, you're starting Mahomes. I understand he's going to be ranked inside the top 10. He's been good enough to kind of earn the stability of that ranking. But I just have a feeling that in this matchup, the bottom could drop out here. Low scoring game. The Chargers really try and control the ball. The Chiefs have really been trying to control the ball. I could see both of these teams possibly scoring less than 20 points in this matchup.
And to keep it in the same game, would you roll with Herbert in this one or Mahomes?
Herbert, for sure.
Herbert, yeah.
I know Herbert had a bad game last week, but I just think what the Chargers have been going towards has been leaning more and more into Herbert instead of leaning more and more into their defense and run game. And, I think with how the running game played out last week, they were not good on the ground at all. Gus just wasn't it. Vidal isn't it. Or, Vidal didn't even play that much. So I don't know. I'm going to go back to Herbert. I think that they're going to need to score here. And I think Herbert could be in store for like a passing and a rushing touchdown, maybe to elevate that ceiling a little bit. But if he's able to get a couple scores, 250, I think that's reasonable. And I don't know if Mahomes gets there. Moving down to QB2s now, the first guy we're going to talk about here as our QB2 start is Derek Carr. So he goes up against the Giants. So this one is a significant amount about the matchup. He's in a really good spot with this team as constructed currently because they're still rolling out bad quarterback play. The Saints should be able to have their way with the Giants defense. They should be able to have the ball a lot. I think the Saints defense too this past week against the Rams just showed out quite a bit more than we had seen coming out of their bye. So getting a little healthier, just less banged up, more energized. I think that can help keep the ball with them. And I know Taysom Hill just tore his ACL, so that's really unfortunate for the offense overall. But it also is a little bit of a benefit for him too, because he's not going to have Taysom taking quarterback snaps away from him, not going to be taking quarterback snaps on the goal line, not going to be taking quarterback snaps on, 1st and 10 where he's going to run around the side for a 70-yard touchdown, right? Like those type of things aren't going to happen in this offense anymore. And so I think that for me adds confidence to Derek Carr, knowing he's going to be out there on all the plays, knowing that he's going to be the one under center or getting the ball in the shotgun, and that the offense is going to run back through him. So I think Valdez-Scantling probably scores again here, and Kamara maybe sees his volume in the passing game increase in a way that it just kind of hasn't been there the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and with Derek Carr too, I mean, since returning from injury, he has not thrown a pick. And one of the things I like about Carr in fantasy is he is not afraid to throw it deep. And it's not like these Jameis Winston bombs where you're holding your breath. It always feels like, even though it's MVS, like it's going to land good and it's going to score. And speaking of MVS, I have to give you credit because in a league you told me to start MVS over Tank Dell, and I didn't. I told you he's my least favorite player, and he catches a bomb touchdown. And I don't think I had the courage to text you at that moment, but I just want to say I appreciate that.
I didn't even text you. I saw it and I was like, Tank Dell's got 1 for 5, and it was just, I don't know. I knew you hate MVS too, so I framed it as dude, I think you might want to play MVS. And you're like, no, I hate him. It's like I knew that was going to be the reaction. I didn't even press. I'm like, I didn't even start calling you an idiot. I didn't even try and get you to go further than that. I was just like, okay, fine, I get it. You're not playing it. But side note on Tank Dell, I think he's droppable. He looks horrible.
I dropped him.
Stroud is terrible. He's just not. I mean, he's out there on all the snaps, and Nico got 12 targets and he got 4 and caught one of them. I don't know. It's just I don't know. Tank Dell is a shell of himself from last year. I don't understand. Maybe it's still the fibula break. He's not back to 100%. Maybe it was all the tape got out on him and, they were able to shut him down or something. I don't know what's going on there. But if you have him in Dynasty, you had him in Best Ball. I mean, he was getting pushed up into the mid-30s of Best Ball. I feel bad for everybody that
And it's
bought into
interesting
Tank
because
Dell.
yeah, and I hope it is, the injury and that he comes back stronger, because this year we've seen him as the number 3, as the number 1, and as the number 2, and he hasn't really produced in any of those roles.
He's been terrible, and he's been terrible, and he's been terrible.
Yeah. So it's like I'm out of excuses. I love him, but I don't know.
Tank Dell was one of my better preseason calls because a lot of people were saying Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell were going to be a closer than Diggs and Nico, and
me.
Obviously, Nico ascended into well above Diggs, but before Diggs got hurt, he was wide receiver 7 on the season. So he was a lot closer to Nico than to Dell, and Dell has just been terrible. I think I had Dell ranked like outside the top 35 in my final wide receiver rankings. So not to pat myself on the back too much, but I do feel very good about how that call turned out.
It was a good call. I'll give you that one. I was on Team Dell, not above Nico, obviously, but I had he and Diggs side by side, and I'll own that L.
Yeah. Moving down to our QB2 sit of the week is Jameis Winston. Obviously coming off of one of the classic Jameis Winston games. I mean, almost 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, racking up fantasy points like crazy, but then has 3 picks, including 2 pick sixes, and kind of ended up costing his team the game because of the mistakes. But 33 fantasy points. He had 14 against Pittsburgh the week before, though. So that's why I'm putting him as a sit. That's why I'm trying to pump the brakes here. I think they try and keep the score down. I think Pittsburgh's really good at playing ball control as well. Their offense should be able to keep Cleveland off the field. And I just worry that in terms of volume that, he threw 58 passes this week. Obviously, he's going to have a massive game. I don't know that the Steelers are going to give him the opportunity to throw that many passes. Last time they played, he only threw 27 passes. Didn't have a passing touchdown. He did rush for a touchdown, so that kind of saved his day a little bit in terms of fantasy. But, there's probably a lot of people out there, myself included, that own Winston and are excited to play him. They're like, oh, come on, we got to get him in our lineups. Like, it feels like he should be a top 10 quarterback, but, I'm not there with him. I'm not going to be playing him. I'm fortunate to have Baker and Josh Allen in that league, but overall, even if I didn't, I don't think I'm playing Winston as a top 20 quarterback this week.
Would you play him over Derek Carr?
No.
What about Matthew Stafford?
That one's interesting because Stafford's banged up and playing in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And I haven't checked the weather report. Obviously, Buffalo was very difficult to play in. But with that as the context of I'm not entirely sure what Stafford's situation is going to be. If he is looking healthy by the end of the week and the weather conditions are fine, I'd rather play Stafford.
Okay. I'm with you there on Stafford, but man, that was just so fun to watch on Monday night. Winston,
oh my God,
the full, it was awesome. And do you see, what did he say? Like he's praying to not throw any more pick sixes, specifically.
Yeah. Praying to the Lord to save me from pick sixes.
He's the best, man.
It's just comedy constantly, dude. And there was 900 yards in that game too. It's just so fun to watch that. Jerry Jeudy, major revenge game. I mean, it was one of the better Monday night games that I can remember. Honestly, it was so much scoring and everything. So a couple other guys that you might have with Winston that, you might have accumulated over the last couple weeks here. Will Levis is another quarterback I'd play over Winston this week, and Aidan O'Connell, another quarterback that I'd play over Winston this week. So obviously kind of teeing that up into the next guy we're going to talk about. We have our sleeper of the week, who is Aidan O'Connell, going up against Tampa Bay. So it's, it's a lot of matchup here, right? We did see him play pretty well last week too, though, right? I mean, he went out, he had 19.5 fantasy points. He completed a lot of passes. He had 340 yards and a touchdown, didn't turn it over against Kansas City. That's a pretty major day. And I know that this game was close and they probably should have won if Carlson would have made any of his misses. I mean, he went 1 for 4 on field goals, and then they had the turnover when they were in field goal range with less than a minute left. So, it would have been cool to see O'Connell kind of take down Kansas City in his first start back from IR. But I do have quite a bit of confidence in O'Connell here going up against Tampa Bay, who is probably the best matchup against quarterbacks over the last month. I don't have any numbers to back that up. It just feels like everybody smokes Tampa Bay. So I do think that going up against a much softer defense, that he should be able to perform very well this week.
He looked so good. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that game. Like, I thought it was just going to be a stinker, but dude, that was awesome. And that last play, I know you kind of downplayed the last play of the game, that turnover, but that was just like, come on. That was such a disappointing way for that game to end. And whatever hex the Chiefs have on everyone else, that's just, you know that they're going to find a way to win these type of games, which is just so annoying. But man, Bowers looks great. Jacoby Myers looks great. If you're going to pat yourself on the back for good calls this year, it's just our love of Jacoby Myers. We talked about him so much, and
I had him on so many teams. Yeah. I mean, obviously in our league, I ended up cutting him, which was brutal, right? Because I was going to try and get him back. I was trying to make roster moves and decisions early in the year, and you ended up getting him back. But yeah, I was all over Jacoby. I got him every year. Yeah. So I'm very happy about that call too.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, like, what do you think is going to happen if O'Connell continues to play really well throughout the rest of the season? Are they still drafting a quarterback early?
Yeah.
You think so?
I mean, unless they win games and they end up in the 15th or 12th pick again, okay. And they miss out on the top three. I personally think this quarterback class is really weak, so I don't think anybody out of this class is really going to be a savior. So,
yeah,
maybe they stick with O'Connell, but I
that's
think
the point I'm trying
drafting a quarterback
to make, right? Like, I don't want to get too far into it, like, but is Shedeur going to come in and save the day? I know I'm lower on him than a lot of people, but like
Shedeur, they're definitely taking Shedeur if he's available, or if they can trade up to get him.
I think you're right.
For sure.
The
one that I'm not sold on in terms of like that might be there at a mid-teens pick is Jalen Milroe. And I just don't think they should go that direction. Cam Ward, I think, is going to get picked ahead of Shedeur. I'm not in on Cam Ward that much either. I'm just not there. I just don't think that he's. I don't know. I don't know what it is about his game. I just don't know that he has the big time arm talent, the decision making, and I don't know. Miami's just been so underwhelming that it just feels like he should be able to elevate them that more than he has. So I don't know. It's just a feeling out there on Cam Ward, even though he's going to be a top 5 pick.
But it's so interesting because this happens every single year. It's like Cam Ward, like, I thought he was fine at Washington State. He transfers to Miami. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's going top 5. I'm like, wait a minute. Pump the brakes.
Yeah, since when?
Like,
yeah.
Like, so I guess this is getting me excited for our off-season pre-draft stuff. But this class is not built like last year's.
Yeah, so there's a chance if he plays really well that they stick with him because he is still young. They did draft him only a year ago, so this is only his second season. But he's already 26. He's gonna be 27. I don't know that he's the future of their franchise, and if they can get somebody that they feel that way about in the first round early, especially since there were so many quarterbacks taken last year, it looks like the Panthers are probably gonna stick with Bryce Young too. So like they're not gonna take an early quarterback. So. The Giants are obviously in the mix for an early quarterback. The Raiders are in the mix for an early quarterback. Maybe the Cowboys, maybe Shedeur,
Although Will Levis is playing really well now too.
Yeah, Tennessee. Yeah, Will Levis playing better, but I think Tennessee is going to be up there looking for a quarterback. So. It'll be interesting to see how that part plays out. But for this week, if you can go out and get Aidan O'Connell, or if you picked him up and you have him on your team, and there's so many bye weeks, you have Lamar on bye, you have Jaden Daniels on bye, you have Anthony Richardson on bye, you have CJ Stroud on bye, like any of those guys, I think Aidan O'Connell is a more than adequate replacement for this week.
I agree.
All right, and with that, thank you guys so much for listening. If you are still with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'd appreciate it a lot, and we look forward to talking to you in the next one.
Later.